29-yard line, well in range of the sensational Harrison Mevis. The thicker kicker will get the drama ending he wants. 30-yard attempt by Mevis. And Mevis drills it. And did he just jump his way off the field? 33 to 31.
The thicker kicker. I have never understood the best college football nickname until now. The season is finally winding down, and we still have 5 undefeated teams in the top 5 for college football. Now I'm going to show you guys where I placed those 5 teams because there is a couple shakeups. Then we're going to get into my thoughts, what I think about rivalry week, but first, let's get into my rankings. Alright guys, so here's my top 25. Obviously you can see that I switched around Ohio State, Michigan, and Washington, Florida State in the top 5 like I told you guys I would. There's some other big risers in this top 25, as well as some newcomers at the end, and we're going to talk about it all. Let's get right into it. Starting with the number 1 ranked team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs. They went into Neyland Stadium and completely blasted an overrated Tennessee team. Now I remember before Georgia started this 3-game stretch, everyone thought that they were going to drop a game in here, and honestly the only chance that they had of dropping a game was Missouri, because I knew Ole Miss was overrated and Georgia was going to kill them, and I also knew that Tennessee was overrated and Georgia was going to kill them. And look what happened. It came to fruition. They only won by 9 points at home against the Missouri team that kept it close with them the entire game and had a chance to win that game. Then they played 2 frauds that they're all gimmick and just not that good overall. Ole Miss was playing close to every single team they played regardless how good or bad they were, and Tennessee lost to Missouri 36-7, as well as losing to Florida. This team is not good. They're not good at defense. They're not good at offense. They're okay at running the ball. That's the only thing that they have to their name. With that being said though, Georgia is still clearly the number 1 team in the country. I just hate the SEC bias. I know it's a thing. Everyone knows it's a thing. ESPN, Fox, all those news outlets, every fan should know that SEC bias is a thing. Tennessee is not the 18th ranked team in the country. At most, they're like 23, 24, which is what they were in my previous rankings. Same with Ole Miss. Ole Miss was at like 18, and the committee had them up. And we're going to see tonight where they end up dropping them, because if Tennessee's not outside the top 25, I'm going to riot. And I'm pretty sure a lot of other people are going to riot as well. Ole Miss should not be a top 15 team because they're not. And that's why I got them at the 16th spot, and I'll get into that later on. But moving on, at number 2, we have the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now I put them above Michigan solely because they've been looking better than Michigan. Michigan won their game 31-24 against the Maryland team that honestly had a chance to win. Michigan was winning 23-3 in this game. They had a fumble recovery for a touchdown, 2 safeties, an interception or 2, I'm not sure which, and Maryland was only 7 points away. Talia Tagovailoa basically gave Michigan this game. And I don't know, if I'm a Michigan fan, I'm getting kind of worried heading into this game with Ohio State, just because on offense you're not going to be able to run the ball 30 plus straight times to win. So if JJ McCarthy isn't playing his best football, they're going to lose. Michigan has shown that they do not trust JJ McCarthy to win them the game. He threw a pick in the end zone of this game. They could have put it completely out of reach, but JJ McCarthy, he could not close the deal. He made a terrible throw before that one as well that should have been intercepted. So honestly, in my opinion, if Michigan's going to win this game, it's going to be off of their defense creating turnovers and making special teams plays that the offense isn't going to be able to do. And that's the key for Michigan. Now for Ohio State, I have at the 2 spot. They beat Minnesota 37-3. They got a late field goal at the end. Minnesota did, with all of Ohio State's backups in. And I don't understand. Minnesota still had all their starters against Ohio State's like 2, 3rd, 4th string people, which I don't know. PJ Fleck, I don't know what he's thinking. I just think that's kind of lame to do that just to score so you don't get shut out. Then on the Ohio State side, for the game against Michigan, I feel like they have a good shot to win this game, especially with the offense and how it's playing with TreVeyon Henderson, and then obviously having Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to help them out a lot. Their run game is going to be a little bit better. Michigan is susceptible to the run. They do give up some rushing yards, but with Ohio State, they do the exact same thing. They give up rushing yards. They let you get to midfield or the 40-yard line until they kind of hold you there. Then you either have to punt or you have to attempt a long field goal. So honestly, I think everyone knows that this is going going to be a defensive game. It's going to be like a 2017 type of game. I'm expecting both defenses to shine against quarterbacks that really aren't that good. But in my opinion, the defenses are basically the same in talent, and they've performed around the same. If you look at the stats, they're basically the same as each other. The only difference is Ohio State has more weapons on offense, obviously with the best player in NCAA in Marvin Harrison Jr. and then having TreVeyon Henderson. I think that's better than Loveland and Roman Wilson. We don't know if Roman Wilson's even going to play. Blake Corum is good. Donovan Edwards good. They've gashed Ohio State before, but I don't think this is the same Ohio State defense. So this is going to be an amazing game, and I just cannot wait for it. Also, on a side note that I just want to squeak in there, since Michigan has been found out for cheating in these last few games, they have not looked the same. JJ McCarthy, not knowing what the other team is doing, is absolutely killing him inside, and he has not performed really well. So I guess we'll see how much tape they got on Ohio State from their good old friend Connor Stallions. Then moving on, at the number 4 spot, we have Washington. Washington, they went to Oregon State. They won 22-20 in a game where it rained the entire day, and Michael Penix didn't have the best game, but he did ice it at the end with a completion, get a first down to completely shut Oregon State down. Then they ran the clock out and they won this game. And I'm not gonna lie, Oregon State dominated Washington in this game. They had 37 minutes possession time to Washington's 22, 317 total yards to Washington's 272, 22 first downs to 14 first downs for Washington. But you know why Oregon State lost this game? 3 turnovers to 1 turnover for Washington, 2 interceptions from DJ Uiagalelei, and if they were going to win this game, he had to play a great game, and he played a terrible game. Less than 50% completion percentage, only 160 yards passing, 2 interceptions. I know it was raining, but you have to make better decisions if you're going to be a top 5 team. And again, we just see Washington squeak by week to week to week. They kind of remind me of TCU from last year. They're just winning any way possible. They're winning. They're not beating these teams, but they are winning. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. And the reason I put them above our number 5 team, Florida State, is because Florida State just does not look like Florida State. And now I'm going to talk about Jordan Travis. I saw his gruesome leg injury real time. What an absolutely horrible thing that happened at the end of the season like that. And I hope he has a quick recovery, and I hope he has a good draft day and some team takes a chance on him, because he has heart and he has will. He is a loyal guy. He stayed at Florida State for a pretty long time. My prayers go out to him. And this Florida State team, they did win their game 58-13 against North Alabama, but they were losing 13-0 in the first quarter. And then Travis went down, and then they brought in their backup, which their backup is going to have to carry them for the rest of the season. And if they make the playoff, through the playoffs, so they are going to have to prove themselves in these last couple games if they even belong in the college football playoff. And that's the thing for me. If they do go 13-0 but win these games by like 1 or 2 points each against Florida and then Louisville, I don't know if they're going to get in 100% without Jordan Travis. I really don't. It's 50-50 for me. I don't know if the committee would slight a 13-0 ACC champion like that, especially with Florida State's name and reputation, but they might if Alabama beats Georgia convincingly, but that's a different talk for another day. Moving on to our number 6 team, that's the Oregon Ducks. They have stayed pat the last few weeks. They beat Arizona State 49-13. Bo Nix had 6 touchdowns in the first half. He is the front runner for the Heisman, right behind Marvin Harrison Jr. in my humble opinion. I do like Jane Daniels. The only reason I do not have him up there, he has lost 3 times, and they've lost to the 3 best teams that they've played, and you just can't do that if you're a Heisman winner to me. But his numbers are absolutely amazing. I think he's a really good quarterback, and he definitely deserves to go and be in the ceremony. Then after them, we have Texas, still sitting at the 7th spot. They beat Iowa State, a team that people thought was gonna knock them off. Because if you guys don't know, Texas, they lost their starting running back, Brooks, but they did bring back quarterback Quinn Ewers last week, and he gives them a lot of dimension, and they've been playing decent with him. They played decent last week, but they almost let TCU come back, and this week they stayed in the driver's seat the whole time. They won 26-16. Texas stays packed. And also staying pat is Alabama, sitting at the 8th spot. They beat Chattanooga 66-10. There's really nothing to talk about. Texas won their game, so they are going to stay ahead of Alabama until further notice. And after Alabama, we have number 9 Louisville. They win to Miami. They won that game 38-31. Miami has been close in a lot of these games. They were 7 points away from beating Florida State, and then the week after, they're 7 points away from beating Louisville. I really don't know what to make of this Miami team because they underperform every single year. They lose games that they shouldn't lose, but then they're in the big games that they play. It's just really odd coming from a team like that. But Louisville, they were able to keep it going. Their defense played okay. Their offense was able to take advantage of a Miami secondary that just isn't that good. And I cannot wait for Louisville versus Florida State, because without Jordan Travis, I think this is going to be a really good game, and Louisville has a really good chance of winning. And then rounding out my top 10, I had the Penn State Nittany Lions. They beat Rutgers 27-6. Now this game was 10-6 at halftime, and everyone was wondering what's going on with Penn State, but we all know Rutgers has a good defense this year. So I really wasn't surprised that Penn State wasn't putting up the big numbers, which they did. They only won this game by 21. I only say only because they only scored 27. And I feel like a few people are going to give me some shit for not putting Missouri in the top 10 instead of Penn State because of how terrible they are on offense. But look, Missouri, they're sitting at the 11th spot. They only beat Florida 33-31. They needed a walk-off field goal at home to beat Florida, and Florida had a backup quarterback at the end of the game. And I'm sorry, when you play a team like Florida that's basically like Rutgers in the Big Ten and only win by a field goal, I'm sorry, Penn State's win looks better than Missouri's win. It just does. So that's why I have Penn State at the 10th spot, and that's why I have Missouri at the 11th spot. Even though Missouri has one of the best kickers in football right now, with the best name I've ever heard in my life. We already talked about it, the thicker kicker. Then after Missouri at the 12th spot, we have the Tulane Green Wave, which keep winning. They won their game 24-8 over Florida Atlantic. Their quarterback Michael Pratt, he was 21 for 28, 250 yards, 3 touchdowns. Really solid game by them. This is the first game that they played where I knew they weren't going to win by only 1 or 2 points. They actually put together a decent game, and they just keep on winning. So having them at the 12th spot is kind of crazy for me, but I feel like just winning, you deserve to be there. That's originally where I had James Madison until they lost, and we'll get to that later on. And then moving along, after Tulane, I have the Arizona Wildcats at the 13th spot. They are the highest ranked 3-loss team for me. They beat up on Utah 42-18. And Arizona, they scored the first 28 points in this game. They were winning 28-0 in the second quarter. And honestly, the reason that they beat Utah this bad was because of those 2 4th downs that Utah wasn't able to get. Arizona was able to score. And then those 2 interceptions thrown by Bryson Barnes, they were also able to score. But if you look at the stats, the game was pretty close from a stats perspective. Barnes threw for 320 yards. This is usually a running team, but Arizona's secondary, it's not that good. Bryson Barnes was able to pass the ball on them. And Utah actually had more first downs than Arizona by 5 and had 11 more minutes of possession time. But when you don't execute, when you turn the ball over 2 times and then fail 2 4th downs and those turn into points, it's very hard to win when you do that, and Utah wasn't able to overcome it. And then moving on from Arizona, I have Oklahoma. They beat BYU 31-24. Dylan Gabriel actually got injured in this game. Jackson Arnold actually had to come in and get some meaningful reps as Oklahoma's quarterback. Now, I'm going to be honest. BYU ran all over Oklahoma. I don't know what's really gotten into them and why they're not being as consistent as they were at the beginning of the year. But Brett Venables has to figure it out, because BYU could have easily won this game. Again, they turned the ball over 3 times. 3 turnovers for BYU and 0 for Oklahoma. Those 3 turnovers could have easily been scores. And they also outgained Oklahoma by 22 yards, and then they had more time possession by 3 minutes. And all that is the reason why I put Arizona above Oklahoma. Oklahoma probably should have lost this game, or it should have even been a little bit closer. So that's why you see an 8-3 Arizona team over a 9-2 Oklahoma team right now. And then running out top 15, I have Oregon State. We talked about Oregon State. I only moved them back a few rankings since they only lost by 2 points to Washington. A very heartbreaking game for them, but they do get to have some revenge against Oregon next week. It's at Oregon, so not likely, but we'll have to see what happens. Then at the 16th spot, I have the Ole Miss Rebels. They beat Louisiana Monroe 35-3 and were only up 7-3 at halftime. I'm so sorry, but this team is just pathetic. They're not good. They're overrated. I'm tired of the committee propping these teams up, but being up 7-3 against UL Monroe at halftime, It's just horrible. Lane Kiffin needs a good firm sit down and talking to about why these teams are still in a game with a top 15 team. After them, we have LSU sitting at the 17th spot. They won their game 56-14. Jayden Daniels 25 for 36 touchdowns through the air and 2 more touchdowns rushing. And he also had 96 rushing yards in this game by himself. He is a one-man team. He really is. Jayden Daniels is a one-man team. And if they only had like 1 or 2 losses, he would be the Heisman frontrunner for me. He would, but having 3 losses, it just taints it for me. I know it's about the best player that takes their team, but he's not taking his team anywhere with 3 losses. That's why it's just too much for me. Next, right behind LSU, I have Notre Dame sitting at the 18th spot. They completely obliterated Wake Forest 45-7 in Sam Hartman's homecoming against his old team. He threw for 4 touchdowns while Audric Estime ran for 115 yards against them. And let's be honest, Wake Forest didn't really have a chance in this game. They're not a good team this year on defense or on offense. And honestly, I didn't think Notre Dame would score 45 points against them though. I was expecting it to be like a 35-10 type of game or 35-13. But this was a very impressive game for the Fighting Irish. And after the Fighting Irish, we have the Liberty Flames, and they keep it rolling. They are 11-0 after a 49-25 win over UMass. Now, this is going to be a take. I feel like Liberty might be the team that's going to represent the group of 5 in a New Year's Six Bowl. I feel like if they win every single game, they have to, right? I know we have other teams on here like Tulane, but Tulane might lose their championship game, and then we have like SMU and Toledo, which we're gonna get into. Those teams are also like primed to take it. James Madison can't because this is their first year of eligibility for the FBS, and NCAA rules says that they cannot participate in a bowl game, which is absolutely shit, by the way. But I don't make the rules. Congrats, Liberty. And then rounding out the top 20, I do have James Madison. They actually were undefeated until this week. They lost in overtime, 26-23 against Appalachian State. This game was so evenly matched the entire time. Both teams couldn't run the ball. Both teams could pass the ball. Both teams had the same amount of turnovers. And it was just really even the entire time. And it was so saddening that James Madison couldn't pull it out at home against this Appalachian State team. But credit to their quarterback. He threw for 3 touchdowns versus McLeod's 1. McLeod's had been having a really good year, but Appalachian State had the final laugh and they took down an undefeated team. I still think they're top 20. That's why I have them at the 20th spot. Good luck to James Madison for the rest of the year. And then moving on, at the 21st spot, I have Kansas State. They beat Kansas 31-27. And honestly, I feel like Kansas played a better game. They outgained them and were able to run all over the Wildcats. And with their 3rd string quarterback, Daniels and Bean are both out. They're both injured. So they're playing Cole Ballard and still almost won this game. This is why Kansas State is only up a couple spots for me. Because if you're coming into a game with your starting running back, your starting quarterback, and you almost lose to a team's 3rd best quarterback and get outgained, I just don't think you should rise as much. So I have Kansas State at the 21st spot. Moving on, at the 22nd spot, we have Oklahoma State. They bounced back after a horrible loss to UCF, and they beat Houston 43-30. Bowman threw for 350, 2 touchdowns. Ollie Gordon, their amazing running back, he ran for 164 yards. And besides that, this game, it was very high scoring the entire time. But they should not be letting Houston score 30 points against them. That's just, in my opinion. Oklahoma State, I know their defense isn't that good, but a lot of these lesser teams like scoring in the 30s and 40s against them. Letting UCF score 45 points is just unforgivable. Like, this defense, I don't know how they beat Oklahoma. It was just the rivalry, but something's got to give, because if they play Texas in the Big 12 championship game, they're going to get destroyed because of that defense. But we'll have to see what happens. And then moving on, after them, we have Iowa. Iowa's sitting at the 23rd spot. They beat Illinois 15-3. And if that doesn't sound like one of the most Iowa type wins, then I don't know what does. Deacon Hill is actually not that bad of a quarterback for Iowa. He had 20 completions and 160 some yards and a touchdown. And then they heavily leaned on their defense. They got a safety in this game, and that's the reason they won in the first quarter. I'm just really curious who Iowa's going to end up playing in the Big Ten championship game. I'm even more intrigued to see what Deacon Hill and this team's able to do against that team, either Ohio State or Michigan. But then moving on, To the 24th spot, I have SMU. Ever since they lost to TCU, they've been on a 7-game win streak, and they just beat an 8-2 Memphis team 38-34. Now SMU, they have a really good offense. I really do think that they're a top 25 team, especially after this win streak. It's just really impressive to me. And this game in general was so good. Seth Hennigan, he had 400 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Preston Stone, he had 286, 2 touchdowns as well. It was just a very evenly matched game, and I feel like I would have ranked Memphis too maybe if they were able to beat SMU. But SMU came out with the victory. They're sitting at the 24th spot. And then to round out the top 25, we have the Toledo Rockets. They beat Bowling Green in a crazy game. They came back in the fourth quarter. They scored 15 points to Bowling Green's 3 and ended up winning 32-31. This was such a great game. Daquan Finn came out clutch in the end, leading his team down the field for that last touchdown with a minute 45 left. Toledo is 10-1, and honestly, this offense definitely deserves to be in the top 25. So welcome to the top 25, Toledo. That's going to round it out for me. Now with the college football selection show coming on tonight at 8 o'clock, there's one big implication that I am looking for to determine that 4th or maybe even the 3rd spot in the playoff, and that is where they put Washington and Florida State, because if they do move Washington above Florida State, that's going to show it's going to be harder on Florida State to actually get in, no matter what happens if they win out, because they lost their quarterback and how they've looked recently. So I cannot wait for that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like and comment. We're going to dissect next week about what happens in rivalry week. We're going to talk about the Ohio State game with Michigan. We're going to talk about the Iron Bowl. We're going to talk about everything. But for me, that's it. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.